Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Dana Hinton, and I'm the president of the College of St. Benedict. On behalf of President Himmelsath and myself, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the concluding session of the 25th anniversary meeting of the Association of Benedictine Colleges and Universities. Before I introduce tonight's speaker and share some opening remarks, I'd like to ask if you would join me in thanking the people who've made this conference possible. President Himmelsath has a wonderful team in Patty Epsky, Doris Matter, and Marianne Hawes, along with Janine Sabe, and I apologize, Janine, if I've said your last name incorrectly. But folks have worked since October to make the past 3 days possible. Will you join me in giving them a round of applause? It has been just a truly outstanding couple of days. And right before the conference, someone asked me what they should expect when they participate in the ABCU Leadership Institute, and I confess that I had to pause for a moment before I answered the question. You see, what happens in this gathering cannot be contained in a session description or a series of bullet points. Yes, we learn something new. And yes, we leave rejuvenated from our numerous informal conversations. But what happens here is actually more than learning and rejuvenation. ABCU provides an opportunity to live in and experience community in new and powerful ways. By gathering campus and monastic leaders together, I think we find ourselves shifting our gaze just a bit. We think about our work and our humanity in a different way. For this annual gathering, I am truly grateful. And tonight we have an exceptional opportunity to think of learning and humanity as we hear from Abbot Primate Emeritus Notker Wolf. Abbot Notker Wolf was born in Bad Grunenbach, Aargau, Germany. He entered the Archabbey of St. Adeline, Ammersee, Germany in 1961. He completed his philosophical studies at the International Benedictine House of Studies in San Anselmo, Rome in 1965 and earned a doctorate from the University of Munich. He studied philosophy for his doctoral work and later served as a professor of philosophy and scientific theory at San Anselmo prior to his election as Archabbot of St. Adeline, Ammersee, and eventually Abbot President of the Benedictine Congregation of St. Adeline. He was elected Abbot Primate of the Benedictine Confederation in 2000 and served as the 9th Abbot Primate until 2016. Abbot Notker has served as chair for aid to Benedictine monasteries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, the Interreligious Monastic Dialogue, and the Benedictine Commission on China. He's also a member of the European Academy of Sciences and has traveled the world to promote the Benedictine way of life. He has received numerous awards, including the Bavarian Order of Merit and the Great Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany, the Bavarian Constitution Medal, the Wolfram Engels Award, and the Pax Christi Award from St. John's Abbey and University. He is fluent in English, Italian, German, French, Spanish, Latin, and Greek, and Luxembourgeois. He is the author of several best-selling books. His hobbies are classical flute, electric guitar, and languages, and we will have the opportunity to hear him play tonight. I will tell you two things from my very brief introduction to Abbot Notker. I may or may not be in love with him, and he said that when he dies, his epitaph will read, "It was not boring." And now we welcome Abbot Notker Wolf to speak with us about the time of study, an integral part of human development. It is
Thank you, Mary, for this lovely introduction. Dear sisters and brothers, I first should like also to thank Abbot John, who has assisted me for many years and provided me with the Peace Award of the university. I should like to thank especially also the president and his office, and from his office also Patty, because of her enormous patience with me. Second, I should like to apologize my bad English, but I don't like to read just a translated paper, and therefore you will have to indulge me a bit. And after the year of indulgence is already over, but I think we have learned something during that year. Anyhow, during these days, I was reflecting again and again what I should like to say. I had prepared something, but I was listening and reading, and I think we should listen again to the young people who are coming to our schools for education and formation. We were now speaking much about the 10 hallmarks. I heard this expression very often. But that's from above what we want to give. That's good. And we have to be clear about what we want to give. But on the other hand, are we really listening to the young people, what they need? What is their situation? Because we are influencing later on their life, and to a positive goal, I hope, in order to have afterwards personalities which are autonomous, self-confident, and responsible in our societies as Christians, and who can be proud about their Benedictine formation. Therefore, in the first part, I should like to simply reflect upon the situation of the young people. It's a beautiful part. And the second one, about the relation to their studies. And the third part will be how we should behave as teachers, as professors, what they are expecting from us. And I have still a fourth part, that we look outside the box. I think we have also to give something which I didn't hear so often. Now the first part, the situation. The youth time is a very fascinating and period and challenging period of our life. We have still time enough. It's interesting. When I'm looking back, I'm asking myself, where has all the time gone you had once as a youngster? When we had time to lie on the campus, to develop our dreams and ideas. Oh, that's beautiful. Together with friends. It's the time of hope. We are looking forward. We are not looking back, because we have no past at this time. That's very important. One of my predecessors at St. Ottilian, he said, when I was young, I would have liked to die, but now no longer, because I have still to accomplish many things and to correct many things. Young people have no past, and therefore they are looking forward, full of hope, full of expectations. And they do not even know how they are going to look like when they have grown up. And there are so many and nor do they know what they are going to do. So many doors are open, and they can still devote their time to something without thinking of tomorrow. It's still time and room for creativity in music, dancing, painting, writing love letters, love poems. It's a beautiful time. We have still time, as I said, to lie on the campus and discuss and to sit together until the next morning and discuss many things. The question of the existence of God, about our political system, if it's really a democracy of participation. Time factor does not matter yet, and that's very good. And we try to find the truth ourselves. We want, that's another step, we want to get out of paternalism. It's the time which I felt very much last century in 1968 during the Students' Revolution. We wanted to get rid of any kind of paternalism in our homes, in our monasteries, in our society. We were against the big institutions. We had the flower children. It was a beautiful time. And there was the Summerhill model of A.S. Neal, with the idea that the human being develops itself if we give him the freedom or her the freedom. We should not force anybody. We need the freedom of education, but it should not be free of education. It's something a little bit difficult. Anyhow, we are leaving at that time our parents. We are moving out of the house of the parents. Not always in Italy nowadays. The boys prefer to stay very long at home. It's very comfortable, the comfort zone of the mother. But very often we leave the usual path of security. We travel to other countries. Germans like to travel after their graduation to India. It gives also some kind of feeling of freedom. Our life becomes an adventure, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. And that's a basic part of preparation for economy later on. So we get aware of our freedom. Born to be wild, born to be free. We still remember the movie Easy Rider, which was a cult in my younger period, and I'm still watching it. Because there you can still feel the exciting moments. And it's beautiful. We like to, at this period, we like to dance, to jump over ditches, jump with our heads into the water. And our whole body is fermenting, boiling. And our body is changing, not uniformly, but in relapses. It's a bewildering and exciting period. And the boys are testing their strength, wrestling with one another, with each other. It's also the time and the period when we discover our body and the force of sexuality. When we are forced to integrate sexuality into our personality. When we see that the body is part of ourself. It's our visible self. And then we start to care it, look at the women, but also in men. Men cannot always, how would you say, block in front of their own idleness. They also want to be very beautiful and are doing very much for that. But you don't speak about it too much. Or they want to look very wild. But we discover not only ourselves, we discover also the others, the other self. We are looking for friends and partners, and the most beautiful time is when we are falling in love. And I don't know if you remember, but this is really beautiful, and a new life is coming in. Like in the movie, or what was it? It was an operetta. I feel pretty, oh so pretty, da 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 da. Just great, the West Side Story, where you can see this whole development. I think it's important that we think back to these times if we are teachers, and that we don't forget this. And then we are feeling the necessity of a community, of communion. Solitude makes you sad. As singles, we are rather stunted instead of unfolding. Only together we find the fullness of life. And that's important. I don't know so much the American society, but imagine that 51% of the households in Munich are single households. That's a crisis of our German society. Now the combination with study. This youth time is really exciting. It's bewildering. And I must concede, and I must tell you, it's always beautiful to sit together with young people, to listen to their hopes, their dreams, and to share their joys and their sorrows. But this is exactly the period when they should study and build up their later career. This is linked together. And it's the period of growth. And there are many factors which may hinder, block our studies. Listlessness, tiredness, being moody, and you don't know why. It's because of your hormones in your body. Nevertheless, you cannot escape from the challenges of study and formation. But I think even nature likes this combination, because during this age, curiosity is still very high. You want to know much, and you are going to investigate stubbornly until you find the last answer. I still remember, for example, at night, when you were sitting in front of a riddle in mathematics, you couldn't sleep. But it would have been better to sleep, because the next morning you knew it already. And you start asking why, and why. And the Greek philosopher Socrates, he's one of the examples of my life. He never finished asking why. Or is that really so? Or is it a bit different? He was the man who questioned all the time. Of course, he was sitting in the marketplace, and his poor wife got a bad reputation, the Xantippe. And but this is the right ground for studies. And also your memory is still fresh and receptive. When you are getting old, I can feel it. Your memory is shrinking. You are forgetting so many things. But when you are getting older, you may come to a point of wisdom where you see the relations, the interrelationship between things. I hope that we become more wise. It's not always the case. Now, it's also the time where we can inspire ourselves for something, that we become enthusiastic. One of the students at St. Ottilian at my home monastery could no longer sleep until he had read all the works of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He lost his sleep, he got everything. He had an infinite endurance. He was sitting, lying, reading. And you need also endurance and persistence in sports if you want to achieve a good performance. The same holds true for a musician. And you have to learn really to be stubborn in this, and it's not easy. And the same with a foreign language. We have learned in our school per aspera ad astra, through hardships to the stars. Or vor den Preis haben die Götter den Fleiß gesetzt. The gods have set the diligence before the award. Endurance and resilience are the traits of a character which need also their training. We don't, as physical facilities, usually we think it's sufficient to know that this is the right thing, but that doesn't say that you are able to do it. This is the big problem in, I would say, in the whole Occident, spiritual, in our whole spiritual history. We have become intellectualistics. We think that we know what is good, we are able to do it, but it's not the case. We have no longer a real ascetic life in that sense, or ascetic orientation. We always think, as I said, that knowing it, you are able to do it. But that's not true. Already St. Paul says in our bones is a different law. We are not doing what we should do and what we want to do, but we do what we don't like to do. So, therefore, also our qualities of character need a special training. And this is a very hard challenge. And of course, it's nice to draw back to a comfort zone. But this is not the day of tomorrow. Because missing training leads to idleness, the enemy of the soul, as St. Benedict says. Therefore, also an ongoing training will produce success, and this gives a new motivation. A next point is a young man or woman during this time steps out of him or herself, is dedicating to the study or dedicating to other people, or even dedicating one's life, I would say, to Jesus Christ. We have also forgotten after Vatican II to tell young people the beauty of dedication of one's life to Jesus Christ. We need a kind of ecstasy in the old Greek sense that you are stepping out of yourself. It's the self-forgetfulness which makes you happy. When Jesus said, "He who is looking for himself will lose himself," And the one who is losing himself for Jesus' sake will find himself. Now, let me just change my glasses. Oh. When you are getting older, you are getting handicapped, but you have to become more humble in this sense. But I would say stepping out enables a young man or a young woman to take responsibility and to get trained in his or her social competence. He or she will see that learning contents are only part of the teaching. They are going on distance, they are reflecting about the sense of their studies, the meaning of their studies, and they are growing in freedom, which is another freedom than just the insubordination of a pubescent young man or woman. It is the discovery of one's own autonomy and the respect of the other. This is the beginning of tolerance. It's the sense for community, the sense for responsibility for other people. If this is practiced in school, the young people will discover also the joy of taking over responsibility. I must tell you, I was never looking for my jobs in my life, but I did it always in a way, the whole responsibility, that I enjoyed it, and that people got in the end the impression that he never wanted to do anything else. But then maybe that the plans for the future of our young people will change, values may shift, and they will discover also that our actions, all our actions, are carrying an ethical dimension, and that we need standards of values in order to channel our drives and our spontaneous desires. The development goes on. It is exciting later on to look back. It's an ongoing process. But there are also sorrows and anxieties. And this depends very often upon the character of the individuum. Some people are anxious, more anxious by nature. Some are daredevils. There are also students who have seen suffering very early in their lives. And when we are looking at the curricula, we don't find anything about how to cope with such situations. And therefore, it is important to create outside also of the curriculum this mentality of belonging together. I remember in St. Ottilian, someday at a sudden, a lightning came down to a group and has slain one of the young people. And of course they were all shocked. It was coming out of the dry. And it was interesting to see the reaction of our students, how they stuck together. The psychologists who came a little bit later on to help them to overcome the whole situation, they went back and said, we cannot help. They did it themselves. And the father, a carpenter, prepared the coffin for his son. So this, and he wanted that the requiem is done in our Abbey, was done in our Abbey church, because the father said he was at home there. You see, that's something we have to give, that they feel at home. And so, let me continue again about these concrete human beings. What are we learning? The Roman philosopher Seneca, he wrote in a letter to his nephew Lucilius, "What are you learning in school? You are learning just for school and not for life." And that's something which we should always think about and reflect about. The meaning of life is at stake, not the meaning of studies. When I was young, we discussed so much about the sense of this world, of my own life, of the evil in the world, of theodicy, of the question of the existence of God. Looking back, I must say, we discussed it only according to intellectual criteria. Now I see far more. There are other criteria, like trust, love, hope. They open the doors really for faith and for God. Now, they will also discover that they are bound to give their life a meaning. They themselves. God challenges us to become an entrepreneur of our own life. I'm carrying responsibility for others, but also for myself. And I'm obliged to give an orientation to my life and to follow it in order to cope with it. And I get aware of the numerous possibilities which have been given to me by my charisms, by my different talents, and I can discover them as gifts of God which I accept in all kind of gratitude. The identity of a young man or woman is at stake, but he or she has to develop it together with other person. The you, I don't know if you say it like this, as Martin Buber said, you cannot develop your personality only by yourself. By stepping out of yourself, you will find yourself. I explained it already. And so the question remains, will this life be successful? At least the study period should provide the ground for this, and not only by intellectual means. Therefore, I want to speak about studies in a Benedictine context. What can, you have discussed it, contribute the studies in a Benedictine university to the development of young people? And facilities they cannot find in other places. But I would say, what is a young man also looking for when he is coming here? Of course, the first thing is what he doesn't look so much for, which is really Benedictine, is a solid and balanced structure of the daily life. A solid and balanced schedule, a daily schedule, not rigid. He will learn, or she will learn, that our body has numerous biorhythms, and we have to adapt to them. Saint Benedict assigns certain hours to prayer, reading, or lectio, and work and sleep. It's not a rigid rhythm, but he respects the different length of the day during summertime and wintertime. In wintertime, the Benedictine monks slept for 9 hours. Whoops. But in summertime, 5 hours only. It's because they had to go to bed when they had no electric lights. electricity, and the lamps were rather costly. Saint Benedict doesn't force the human being into numbers, into figures or structures, but the structure should help and support the human being for his or her life. That's what young people perhaps may not so much be looking for, but it helps them. But they are looking for perhaps also for one thing you find at St. John's, and we found it also at St. Benedict yesterday, a wonderful surrounding. Out in the green countryside, it's so beautiful. And I think this helps them also in an indirect way to get an understanding for the protection of environment, for the protection of our climate and the plurality of species. That's important for our young people. And it seems that some of our leading people have never seen that. The grounds for a sustainable behavior is laid in such a monastery. But there is also the embedding into a tradition of serious studies and academic excellence. You have heard, I think it was Father Joel Rippinger and others, that Benedictines promoted scientific studies right from the beginning, not in a sense as nowadays theory of science is doing it, but anyhow, they have fostered and developed science in their time already in Antiquity, and it was the monks to save the science and wisdom of Antiquity for the Middle Ages up to our times in their scriptoria, where they copied all the books we fortunately or unfortunately at school have to read. I'm not sure that everybody is so much happy about Tacitus or Saturn and other people, and especially also in Greek. But they have prepared also the grounds for biological and astronomic research. If you think, the Abbey of Kremsmünster has also an astronomic tower. At St. Ottilien we have also built a telescope. We should not forget Anselm of Canterbury, the patron saint of St. Anselmo in Rome. His ontological proof of God has touched or even occupied all the great thinkers of the Occident. And he was a simple monk and uttered that during a prayer. The French Moorist monks, they were also Benedictines, edited all the texts of the Greek and Latin church fathers. Benedictine schools in Baroque times were outstanding and in high esteem. And our schools are still, up to now, they enjoy a high reputation in Germany and also in other countries, Austria also, for example. And of course, also here. But if I want to characterize the study of what they will find in a Benedictine monastery, in a Benedictine school, it's exactly what yesterday Larry called the inclusive excellence, where you find that all are working together to develop a young man or a young woman, and to have an ear for listening. I can give you an example of my own monastery. There was a young guy who was very weak in Latin, and he was nearly dropped out. And teachers have tried to give him supplementary courses Parents were rich, and they thought it must be possible. And the teachers told the parents to take him away to do another job which enjoys the young boy. Then finally, because they had done so much for our monastery, I called the boy, listen, come. And we sat together for 1 hour. And I tried to find out where the block is. And I saw that he was studying, that he was learning the vocabulary and so on. And then I said, but now let's do it the other way around. Let's construct Latin. Let's build up. Let's start at the verb, and at the different parts of a phrase. And at a sudden he got it. And he overcame the problems, did good exams, and nowadays he's a well-renowned German poet. A man where people said he has no capacities of language. I think that's what they need. And you have to find out, when you have weak people, if they are just lazy, or if there is some block which you may find out. But there is, as an explanation, in the Rule of Saint Benedict, chapter 64, where you can find the inclusive excellence, how it works. The Abbot should always let mercy triumph over judgment, so that he too may win mercy. We must hate faults, but love the brothers. When he must punish them, he should use prudence and avoid extremes. Otherwise, by rubbing too hard to remove the rust, he may break the vessel. He is to distrust his own frailty, and remember not to crush the bruised reed. By this we do not mean that he should allow faults to flourish, but rather, as we have said already, he should prune them away with prudence, and love as he sees best for each individual. Let him strive to be loved rather than feared. I have known a teacher who told me, when they are lazy, when they are no longer obeying well, I explain worse, and so they will have worse, bad remarks. This is cynical. And later on in the same chapter, St. Benedict says, the abbot should be discerning and moderate, bearing in mind the discretion of holy Jacob, who said, if I drive my flocks too hard, they will all die in a single day. Therefore, drawing on this and other examples of discretion, the mother of virtues, discretion, you may also say common sense, for example. It's very difficult to translate it, but it's even more to discern well, not to obey to political or moral correctness. He must so arrange everything that the strong have something to yearn for and the weak nothing to run from. That's really the secret of a good education. Now, this holds true also for the students among themselves, but they have to learn it also from us, to show interest for one another. Competition on the field of sports and, let me see, in languages or in music, but not on the personal level. And they can learn that during group discussions and even playing music together, playing sports. to get a feeling for one another and develop their social competence. And a special factor is listening. Listening with the heart, that they also learn to listen to one another. Now, my last paragraph. The Benedictine universities in the modern world, that's something which our youngsters won't see in the beginning, but will appreciate afterwards. In this sense, what I have explained, our Benedictine universities should be, we should look outside the box, and become a platform of dialogue with the modern, complex world. This has been my great aim in the renovation of the studies at Sant'Anselmo in Rome. And to review the mission and vision statement in this sense, that it's a contact, it's a continued dialogue of the Benedictines with the modern world. Our secularized contemporaries, the researchers of human genetics, of sociologies, and so on, they all need partners to discuss with. And these partners should be well trained. Sant'Anselmo has been a place of historical studies. I said, that's interesting. But that's not what we need really in our times. That's self-centered. And so we need to see that there are still many problems between science and theology. Like, for example, the problem how to insert the theory of original sin into evolution biology. We are escaping. And what's the role of the individuum and its dignity in a time of digitalization? This would be a topic of its own. Our dignity is endangered. We are called, and I shall explain it, we are called to carry on salvation not in a pietistic way, but in the way of coping with our modern life. Prayer becomes a normal attitude of a student in front of God, especially when he can see or she can see the examples in our liturgy. Looking outside the box, I said, a couple of years ago, I visited the research center of Google in Zurich. The whole disposition and subdivision was really informal, easy, all the way how they were discussing with one another. The young people, they were only young people. And I was impressed by their colorful tolerance, I would call it. Especially the possibility when they have got a new idea to call some of the students around to go to a coffee and discuss the new idea there. It's rather creative. But I must say, I didn't feel well. I saw an invisible hand behind everything. It looked like Disneyland. You found everywhere cuddly plush toys, or plush, I don't say how you pronounce it. They have everywhere, like children have, but always very big ones, beautiful. And I have asked myself if these young people will really grow up to adult people, or does Google not allow that they become adults? because perhaps they are more creative when they are nearly kids. They are more curious, more creative. They try more experiments. Perhaps afterwards we are losing our imagination and our energy. I don't know what kind of philosophy is behind the whole thing. It's outside of Zurich. It's in a big box. You find everything there. You can do your exercises. You have also a room for meditation. But everywhere you have these plush elephants and animals and dogs. It's strange. And I must tell you, I felt liberated, freed when I had left the center. I felt like in Walden 2 or in Orwell 84. Nevertheless, I must confess, it was an easy atmosphere. Yeah, and in the evening at 10 p.m., they Skyped with the Silicon Valley every day because of the time change. I prefer autonomous, self-confident, critical people who take care, who see their responsibility for other people and also for the society and for the environment against pollution. To be outside the box, it's also interesting to go to Asia. There you see the students sitting in language boxes, in language labs. They are training there for 12 and 14 hours. And when they are coming out and you say, oh, hello, good evening, huh? They are not capable really of responding then to the situation. It's tapping without thinking. And I was really astonished, but they are drilled to scientific, technical, and economic success, to become rich, especially when I was in China in the 90s. I heard everywhere the main aim is to become rich. And perhaps they want to even to be the first ones in this world, so that no longer America first, but China first. And China, they still have the pride of being the center of the world. That's China. And I'm looking for that. It's interesting to see the whole development. Now, but looking outside the box, you experience also your own values. And I want to mention the other possibilities of looking outside the box is the International Commission for Benedictine Education, the ICBE. And the president is sitting amongst us, Father Abbot Elias. And I think this is a great chance for our teachers to meet, our professors, to meet, exchange their ideas, so you broaden your horizon. And you are sitting down studying what we can give our young people or what they are looking for. I would always say before, what are they looking for before we are giving? We should not force them to anything. Or you have, in my congregation, the mission exposure, or here the volunteer program at St. John's here. That's an enormous possibility, facility for young people which they can't find in other universities. Perhaps there is some exchange program in other universities also, but the closeness to the people, they will experience in our monasteries there is something special. And it's a special experience. We need so there are many possibilities. Our Benedictine schools are thinking global, although bound to a local monastery. What we need for the future society are responsible women and men, not only good scientists, but scientists who are responsible. They are carrying nowadays a completely different responsibility, or far more responsibility than in former times. And now, touching again digitalization, the big internet companies like Google, Amazon, try to manipulate the individuals nowadays completely. They have a profile of each of us, as long as we are in the internet. Only autonomous, critical people will not be overcome in such a challenge, but they will resist in order to save the dignity of each individual. I think that's at stake for the future in our societies. And to develop the individual in a sound, free democracy of a legal order. That otherwise we will be controlled by the arbitrariness of oligarchical rich companies. And this would open the whole horizon of our education again and even more. Saint Benedict has given a rule to the disorganized monks in the 6th century. He writes about the different kinds of monks in the first chapter of his rule. He has given them a clear orientation, but a human one, based on the principle of common sense, of the discretion. God should be given the first place before all human will and individual arbitrariness. The dignity of man, of the human being, is preserved by this way, is preserved if we give the first honor to God. If God is respected, the human being is also respected. In order to transmit that Benedictine mindset, we come back again to inclusive excellence. In order to transmit this Benedictine mindset, we need authentic people, authentic example. That's what young people are looking for. That doesn't mean that you all have to become monks or nuns. But the basics of the rule of Saint Benedict is an anthropological wisdom which is universal. And therefore I can also give many conferences for business people. And quite a number of managers have the rule of Saint Benedict next to their beds and are reading in the evening. They say there is so much wisdom in it, and therefore we shouldn't be afraid of opening the rule of Saint Benedict. And also it's an anthropology based upon the Holy Scripture. It's the redemption. It's the redemption of the anthropology, but it's so human. If you read it, it's incredible. And if you adapt it to your work, in your universities, in your work with your co-teachers, with your colleagues, with your youngsters, you will be very successful. Let us work for the young people in order that God may be glorified in everything. Thank you. Yes, I have put my ear aids.
Okay. We are now prepared to take questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask questions of the Abbot Primate Emeritus. Well, I believe he will be, oh, we have a question here.
I really enjoyed your discussion of it in terms of our digital culture and the idea of autonomy and reclaiming our autonomy, especially in light, I think it was 60 Minutes that did that expose on how they design apps to keep us going back to them, which I want to have my students start watching. And I do see the role as how we become more fully human. So I really enjoyed your tying that together. And from my time at Hewlett-Packard, I remember seeing stuffed animals on top of cubicles and wondering where I was working. And was I at work or at a daycare center? And so your comment on that. And one final thing is that Google and the companies, Facebook, and Yahoo and all of them, the way they're designed is to keep the employees at work. And so they can get their dry cleaning there. They have free food there. They can bring their pets in. But it's designed to kind of take over their lives. And so the rule really does foster the autonomy and the critical thinking and sense of responsibility you're talking about. So thank you for pulling all that together.
I think this will be very important. I don't like to touch the matters of your country, but you know how the whole situation and discussion, how much the election was influenced by digital means. And we are afraid that this may happen in Germany also in fall. And the problem is really, where do you get still objective information? During this, the Second Gulf War, we got to know finally that CNN had given us false information during the First Gulf War. Disinformation or misinformation is always strategic of your enemies. And therefore, we have to be very critical. And also when you are using the internet, and people are so happy to give away in Facebook all kind of information. We have to warn our youngsters, because they are fascinated. And that's true. It's nice when I pull out here from my pockets also my my iPad and see the beautiful visit of Trump with the Holy Father, when Trump touched the hand of the Holy Father. You surely have seen it. But on the other hand, it makes you crazy. And imagine that they are following up. I need also the GPS in my car. But I'm registered all the time where I'm going. Where is the privacy? Zuckerberg, he said the time of privacy is over. Oh gosh, I said, I could smash you at the wall. Because that's such an offensive expression. But he doesn't feel it. But of course he is in power. It's always a matter of power and money in our world. And if we bring at least our young people also to that position, they need to study much and hard. I don't envy them. But we had also to study hard, no problem. And but also to learn this part, that the world is not just a series of chemical formulas which you have to learn and which you can learn, but that you are a human being with responsibility for yourself and for others. And if Abbot Elias complained about this opposition in our societies and our church, there is no more tolerance. That's the reason. And why is there no more tolerance? Because we have no longer a sense that we are all limited, that no one has the full truth. Of course, the church is carrying on in the magisterium, but that's not just 10 packets of sugar. But it has to be always concrete and developed throughout the time. And I think it's to give such a sense to young people, and you will do a great job. Thank you.